Dawn bled into the marina as gulls circled and ropes creaked, and Dr. Mara Quinn said, "Today I follow the numbers, not the myths." Captain Elias Ward eyed the bruised horizon and said, "The sea writes its own math, Doctor." The air tasted of salt and diesel, and the dockhands glanced up as thunder rolled like distant barrels. Mara traced a finger over a faded chart, and she marked a triangle that seemed to pulse under the pencil. She carried a recorder loaded with old distress calls, and one voice still rasped inside her like a splinter. "Find me," it had said, and she had not slept since. Elias checked the fuel and the sat phone, and he said, "Storm cells are stacking wrong to the east." She watched the clouds build walls, and her breath slowed until she could hear the tide counting seconds. A man in a linen suit watched from the pier shadows, and Mara said, "Somebody wants this secret buried." Elias spat into the water and said, "Then we dig." The engine turned once, coughed and caught, and every gauge blinked as if thinking. Somewhere beneath the planks, the sea hummed like a wire about to snap, and Mara said, "We go now before the pattern closes." The boat carved a pale wake into pewter water, and Dr. Mara Quinn said, "Every missing vector converges here." Captain Elias Ward steadied the wheel and said, "Convergence can be a trap." The morning light went flat as if the sun blinked, and the air lost its warmth with a shy retreat. Mara opened a binder of declassified reports, and paper edges lifted in the breeze like gills. She ran a finger across a map of wind bursts, and she said, "Microbursts line the corridor like tripwires." Elias tapped the barometer, and the needle twitched as if nervous. A flock of flying fish veered in a sudden arc, and a slick of cold climbed the back of her neck. "Why does it matter to you this much?" he said, "when the ocean keeps its dead." She closed her eyes and said, "Truth drags at me like a tide." He said, "Truth also drowns." The VHF crackled with empty breath, and the channel hissed like old tape. Mara set a waypoint on the plotter, and she said, "We cross the line in an hour." Elias nodded once, and his knuckles whitened on the throttle as the sea began to rise without wind. By noon the sky looked printed from charcoal, and the compass gained a lazy tremor. Dr. Mara Quinn said, "The magnetometer is drifting off baseline." Captain Elias Ward said, "It will find its way if we do not panic." The engine note thinned as if distance had stretched it, and the hull sounded tight like a clenched jaw. Mara cued the recorder, and a clipped female voice bled through static with a name that stung her chest. "Mayday, this is Isla," the voice said, and then the tape swallowed the rest. Elias lowered the throttle, and he said, "Old ghosts break good sailors." She said, "Ghosts make patterns when they repeat." A shape crossed the radar like a thumbprint, and then the screen erased it with a blink. The wind shifted twice in 2 breaths, and the barometer fell again. Mara said, "There is a corridor inside the storm." Elias said, "Corridors have doors." She leaned into the hiss of the channel and said, "If someone walks through, I must be there." The sea heaved once and held, as if waiting to see what they chose. Twilight arrived early and sharp, slicing the horizon into slate and ember. St. Elmo's fire curled along the antenna like a blue whisper, and Dr. Mara Quinn said, "Ionization is singing." Captain Elias Ward said, "Singing turns to screaming out here." The ocean went glassy as if varnished, and the wake died behind them like a secret erase. Mara lifted the compass, and the card spun with a stubborn grace, refusing due north. She said, "Fields are folding like paper." Elias said, "Paper burns in storms." Lightning crawled inside the clouds with a predator patience, and the sound lagged behind like doubt. She checked the lifelines, tightened her jacket, and kept the recorder ready. He watched her hands and he said, "Whatever you lost, the sea is not its keeper." She said, "It keeps the answers." A phosphorescent smear lit their bow, and the color pulsed in slow heartbeats. The smell of ozone thickened, and the helm felt lighter, as if the boat were skimming over thoughts instead of water. Elias said, "We are crossing a story's spine now." Before midnight the instruments settled into a hush, and even the waves seemed to hold their breath. Dr. Mara Quinn said, "The gap is open." Captain Elias Ward answered, "So is the grave." The plotter drew a clean line toward a point that felt older than the map itself, and she felt the pull of it along her ribs. A faint beacon blinked on the radar and off again, like an eyelid with a secret. She said, "We ride the blink and time the void." Elias said, "Your plan is a dare." The VHF coughed and a filtered voice murmured, "Do not chase the echo." Mara leaned forward and said, "Too late." He cut the engine to an idle, and the boat drifted under a sky that looked printed with iron filings. She set the recorder near the mic and said, "If the pattern repeats, it can be learned." He nodded and said, "And survived." The bow drifted over a seam in the water that shone like glass wire, and a deep tone rose from underneath like a note you feel before you hear. Mara said, "We commit now." Elias said, "Then, hold on." The sea pitched without wind, and Dr. Mara Quinn said, "Readings show heat where water should freeze." Captain Elias Ward leaned over the rail and said, "That buoy drifts wrong." They hauled up a charred life ring stamped with the word Isla, and Mara felt her throat tighten. "It is not a ghost," she said. "It is evidence." Elias touched the scorched foam and muttered, "Fire without flame." A deep hum slid up from the keel, shaking bolts loose like teeth. The VHF crackled again, a faint plea repeating from a long-lost tongue. Mara recorded the sound and said, "Every loop circles the same name." Elias said, "Then we chase a name that the ocean keeps spitting out." A shadow moved under the waves, wide as a hanger, and the wake twisted against the helm. Mara braced, her nails carving lines into her notebook, and whispered, "We are not alone inside this corridor." Elias dropped the throttle, jaw set, and said, "We dig deeper, though the sea digs graves faster than men." The sky bent in odd gradients, as if colors had swapped places. Dr. Mara Quinn said, "Spectral inversion on the horizon line." Captain Elias Ward rubbed his temple and said, "Never saw blue bend into red without smoke." The radar lit with arcs that vanished before she could note them, and a compass card spun like a child's toy. Mara whispered, "Every vanished ship stood here once." Elias said, "And drowned here once." Her recorder caught a sound like a sob layered inside static, and her chest burned with recognition. A pale albatross circled low, eyes flashing silver before vanishing into a seam of cloud. Mara said, "Nature is carrying signals we cannot decode." Elias answered, "Signals lure men to wrecks." She pulled a foil-wrapped file from her pack, marked "Anomaly Reports," and said, "If we compare them, patterns sing louder." He looked at her, steady as the tide, and said, "Songs also lead sailors to sirens." The boat tilted starboard as if pulled, and the bow sliced into darker water. They found a raft adrift, its edges melted like wax. Dr. Mara Quinn said, "Thermal scarring without fuel is impossible." Captain Elias Ward said, "Impossible feeds the triangle." Mara leaned close and sniffed the plastic, catching ozone, not gasoline. She said, "Electrical arcs stitched this." He said, "Lightning without storm." The raft bore initials carved by hand, rough and frantic, and she traced them as if they would speak. Her eyes narrowed and she murmured, "Survivors tried to leave proof." Elias said, "And left bones instead." A child's shoe floated nearby, bloated, pale, and Mara's heart jumped as she gripped it. She said, "The victim is speaking still." Elias turned his face from her trembling hand and muttered, "Some voices do not want ears." She packed the fragments into a waterproof bag, shoulders rigid, and said, "We archive pain until it fits into pattern." Elias said, "Pain refuses patterns." The horizon quivered again, showing 3 suns for a breath, then returning to one. The weather buoy came into view, lights dead, frame bent as if twisted by hands. Dr. Mara Quinn said, "The data core may hold lost cycles." Captain Elias Ward steadied the hook and said, "Russ says it drowned weeks ago." They hauled it aboard with effort, water streaming black from its seams. Mara pried open the casing, fingers shaking with urgency, and circuits glowed faintly like embers under ash. She whispered, "Residual charge carries memory." Elias said, "Memory in metal does not comfort the drowned." Her recorder caught a glitching voice bleeding through the core, repeating fragments of coordinates. She said, "This buoy remembered dying." He said, "Then it warns us of our turn." The deck rocked beneath them as a rogue swell lifted the boat in silence, then dropped it like a stone. Mara gripped the buoy's frame with both hands and whispered, "I will make it speak fully." Elias pulled a tarp across the sparking metal and muttered, "And I will keep us breathing until you do." Night fell sharp and cold, and the sky filled with false stars that shifted like a net. Dr. Mara Quinn said, "Celestial drift is mapping us wrong." Captain Elias Ward said, "That sky wants us lost." She held sextant against the trembling lights, but every measurement blurred as if numbers bled. Mara whispered, "They rewrite navigation itself." Elias answered, "Navigation is how men live or die." The recorder played on loop and Isla's voice hissed softer now, closer, like a whisper at her shoulder. She said, "She is near." Elias said, "She is gone." A false constellation flared, aligning in triangles, and her breath hitched as she mocked them down. "It's deliberate," she said, "not accident." He said, "Deliberate means someone writes it." The air grew warm, sweat under collars though night air should freeze. She locked eyes with Elias and said, "We cross into designed space." He said, "And design has designers." Their bow crossed into starlight that pulsed, and the sea turned mirror black. The storm front faded into a bruised dawn, and the radio coughed alive with a clear voice. Dr. Mara Quinn said, "This signal is not from wreckage, it's a warning." Captain Elias Ward frowned and said, "Or a lure." A small vessel rose from the haze, its bow scarred but intact. A figure waved from the deck, and Mara felt her breath catch. It was Dr. Adrian Cole, once her rival, now a skeptic turned reluctant partner. He shouted, "You should not be here." Mara said, "Neither should you." Adrian climbed aboard, shaking with salt spray, and Elias narrowed his eyes. Adrian said, "The anomalies are real, but following them means death." Mara replied, "Patterns demand pursuit, even at cost." He muttered, "Your obsession blinds you." Elias cut in, better blinded by truth than swallowed by lies. The air stilled again, as though the sea itself paused to listen. Inside the cabin, Adrian spread damp charts across the table, lines sketched like frantic veins. He said, "Magnetics shift here in spirals, not waves." Mara leaned closer and whispered, "Spirals imply intent." Elias grunted and said, "Intent means enemy." Adrian pointed at symbols etched over and over, his voice trembling. "Pilots drew these before vanishing." Mara said, "They were mapping their last breaths." Elias kept one hand on the throttle, knuckles white. Adrian said, "You chase ghosts, but ghosts tear ships apart." Mara answered, "Truth is worth the risk." Adrian slammed a palm flat, saying, "Truth kills as well as hides." The cabin lights flickered, papers fluttering as if pushed by unseen breath. The sea calmed, though no wind allowed it. Adrian stood on deck and said, "This silence is engineered." Mara said, "Or invited." Elias muttered, "No silence is natural this deep." The horizon warped again, showing a ghostly ship, sails shredded, hull transparent as smoke. Mara whispered, "Residual imprint." Adrian turned pale and said, "We are looking at memory itself." Elias gripped the rail, eyes hard, and said, "Memories drag men under as fast as ropes." Mara lifted her recorder, pressing it to the wind, and static whispered Isla's name again. Adrian looked at her and said, "You think you can decode grief?" She said, "Grief leaves tracks like storms." Elias muttered, "And storms sink." Below deck, Adrian connected wires to Mara's recorder, sparks stuttering like fireflies. He said, "If we amplify the frequency, it may reveal source." Mara said, "Or burn it out." Elias warned, "Machines fail faster here." The device hummed, lights pulsing in sync with unseen waves. Static bled into rhythm, almost like breathing. Mara whispered, "It is alive." Adrian shook his head. "Alive or echo, it doesn't matter, it should be destroyed." She snapped, "No, this is proof." Elias muttered, "Proof drowns faster than men." A sudden slam shook the hull, as though something vast brushed its flank. They froze, hearing a hollow knock repeating from beneath. Mara said, "Something speaks back." Night descended heavy, moon veiled by shifting veils. Adrian stared into the black sea and said, "Every death here leaves residue." Mara said, "Residue is truth's footprint." Elias added, "Residue also poisons." The recorder hissed, then cleared, and a voice called, "Help me," drawn out like a plea through time. Mara whispered, "Isla." Adrian shivered, saying, "You will chase her into the grave." Mara snapped, "She is the map." Elias shook his head, jaw hard, and said, "Maps that bleed sink boats." Lightning forked far away, silent, illuminating water that rippled without cause. Adrian muttered, "If we stay, we join the list." Mara answered, "If we leave, truth vanishes again." The sea responded with a deep moan, as though choosing sides. The sea turned to molten silver under a pale noon sun, and Dr. Adrian Cole adjusted the buoy core with fingers too sure. Dr. Mara Quinn said, "You're overriding the sequence." He smiled thinly and replied, "Only refining it." Captain Elias Ward frowned, hands locked to the helm, muttering, "Refinements sink faster than storms." The device pulsed, and a sharp frequency lanced through the cabin like a needle. Mara clutched her ears, eyes wide, and said, "That wasn't calibration." Adrian lowered his gaze and whispered, "Sometimes noise is signal." Mara slammed her notebook shut, anger brimming, and said, "You are hiding something." Adrian leaned back, calm mask intact, and said, "I'm protecting you from a truth you cannot bear." Elias muttered, "Protection is a word for cages." The air grew heavy, and the waves rippled outward in perfect rings, as though the ocean echoed their argument. Night pressed heavy, moon veiled by rushing clouds, and the radio whispered a coded burst. Dr. Mara Quinn said, "Coordinates hidden inside static." Dr. Adrian Cole leaned close and muttered, "It's only random bleed." Elias narrowed his eyes, saying, "Random rarely repeats." A figure stood on the bow, half lit by lightning, a stranger cloaked in black oilskin. He spoke without turning, "You seek answers buried deeper than maps." Mara whispered, "Who are you?" He replied, "An informant, not your savior." Adrian's jaw tightened, muttering, "We don't need riddles." The stranger said, "Truth is never given, only traded." Elias growled, "And what's the cost?" The man turned, eyes shadowed, and said, "The cost is trust, and trust you lack." Before they could answer, lightning struck sea close by, illuminating his face, and then he was gone. The storm thinned to drizzle, leaving the deck slick as glass. Mara said, "He knew our search route." Adrian shook his head, "Coincidence feeds paranoia." Elias barked, "Coincidence doesn't wear boots." Mara spread new notes, triangles repeating across her pages, her voice steady. "The outsider gave us direction." Adrian's eyes flickered, and he muttered, "Or distraction." Elias slammed his palm against the rail, saying, "Every whisper out here has a knife in it." Mara locked eyes with Adrian and said, "Then why did you try to shut down the recorder?" He feigned innocence, shrugging, "Because noise drives men mad." She leaned forward, voice low, "And truth drives liars mad." Silence swallowed the deck again, but the sea below answered with a low groan, as if listening. They descended into the cabin, air thick with salt and machine heat. "Mara said every anomaly aligns with Isla's last known signal." Adrian muttered, "You cling to ghosts as proof." Elias cut in, "Ghosts leave more evidence than men sometimes." The recorder clicked on by itself, emitting a tone that folded into words. "Beware the keeper." Mara whispered, "Keeper of secrets." Adrian's expression hardened, but he forced a laugh. Machine babble means nothing. Elias stared, jaw tight, saying, Babel does not name enemies. Mara leaned closer to Adrian, voice steady. What do you know of him? Adrian turned away, silence stretched. Then he said, secrets are not always yours to uncover. The cabin shook, a violent knock slamming from beneath, as if something vast pressed against the hull in warning. Dusk draped the sea in iron hues, waves calm but brooding. Mara said, the keeper hides where corridors intersect. Elias muttered, and we sail straight into his den. Adrian snapped, then turned back before it's too late. Mara's voice rose, we are too close to abandon now. Elias shook his head, close to what, truth or trap? Adrian's hands trembled as he gripped the rail, saying, some truths kill faster than lies. Mara's eyes narrowed, you know more than you admit. He froze, gaze breaking, then whispered, not all allies wear clear faces. The horizon split with unnatural light, a pyramid of radiance rising from the sea. Mara said, this is his threshold. Elias muttered, and we've crossed it. Adrian stayed silent, his face pale, as the glow consumed the waves. Dawn came bruised with violet clouds as they spotted a drifting dinghy, paint peeled and bow cracked. Dr. Mara Quinn whispered, survivor craft. Captain Elias Ward narrowed his eyes, saying, or coffin. Dr. Adrian Cole muttered, abandoned means cursed. They pulled it alongside, and a young woman sat slumped inside, soaked and trembling. Her lips whispered one word. Isla. Mara's chest constricted, saying, she carries the name. Elias lifted her carefully, muttering, the ocean spits out what it cannot bury. Adrian said, she may not last. Mara replied, she must speak first. The woman coughed salt water, eyes distant, whispering, it took him. Her voice broke as lightning rippled behind the horizon, and Mara steadied her hand, saying softly, tell us what it took. The cabin filled with lantern light as the woman shivered under blankets. Mara said, who are you? She whispered, Clara Ruiz. Elias asked, from which ship? Clara coughed, whispering, the Albatross. Gone. Mara's recorder clicked on, catching her broken words. Clara said, storm without storm, fire without flame, he vanished in light. Adrian muttered, another delusion. Mara snapped, this is testimony. Elias rubbed his jaw, saying, pain leaves sharper trails than truth. Clara's eyes filled, whispering, my brother, Isla. Mara gasped, repeating the voice. Adrian frowned, coincidence. Mara leaned closer, saying, it ties everything. Clara sobbed, collapsing into Mara's arms as thunder cracked. Clara's trembling hand pointed at Mara's maps, her voice cracking. He drew triangles, before light took him. Mara pressed your brother? Clara nodded weakly. Isla, he left notes. Elias muttered, notes wrought with wrecks. Adrian sneered, this is chasing ghosts again. Mara said firmly, ghosts carry truth in fragments. Clara coughed, whispering, he said the keeper waits at the seam. Mara froze, whispering, the keeper. Elias tightened grip on wheel, saying, then we sail closer to his trap. Adrian said, no trap if we turn back now. Clara grabbed Mara's wrist, desperate, saying, he begged someone to follow. Mara whispered, then I follow. Night closed in heavy stars smudged by haze. Clara sat rapt, voice low. I saw shadows under the water, moving against tide. Mara asked, machines or men? Clara whispered, neither, eyes. Elias muttered, eyes drag men under. Adrian scoffed, hallucination from trauma. Mara said, or memory etched into sea. Clara shuddered, whispering, he screamed my name before the light swallowed him. Mara's heart tightened as recorder caught each syllable. Elias said, every lost sailor leaves echoes. Adrian said, echoes do not mean answers. Clara whispered, but answers live in echoes. The boat shuddered, hull groaning as if unseen hands pressed from below. Before dawn, Clara's breathing grew shallow, her whispers breaking. "Tell him. I tried." Mara grasped her hand, saying, "You gave us the map." Elias closed his eyes, muttering, "The sea takes who it wants." Adrian whispered, "Another witness lost." Mara glared, "Not lost, preserved." Clara forced a final breath, whispering, "The keeper waits." Her body stilled, and silence filled the cabin like a tide. Mara whispered, "Her tragedy is the key." Elias said, "Keys open doors or chains." Adrian muttered, "Or locks built to never open." The recorder light blinked steady, holding her final words like fragile fire. Mara clenched her notebook, whispering, "We honor her by finding him." The storm eased into silence, yet tension filled the cabin thicker than salt air. Dr. Mara Quinn said, "Clara gave us the map. We follow it." Captain Elias Ward answered, her words carried pain, not compass lines. Dr. Adrian Cole leaned forward, hands shaking as he snapped, "You can't trust her dying breath." Mara narrowed her eyes and said, "Why fight the trail if you seek truth?" He froze, then forced a laugh, muttering, "Because trails end in graves." Elias muttered, "You fear the keeper more than us." Adrian's jaw tightened, his voice low, "I know him better than you think." Mara's pulse raced, whispering, "You've known all along." Elias gripped the wheel, thunderous. This betrayal could sink us faster than storms. Adrian slammed the recorder shut, saying, "Some secrets were meant to rot with the drowned." The deck groaned as waves rose without wind. Mara shouted, "Adrian, tell us what you hide." He answered coldly, "The keeper is no myth. He built this prison of storms." Elias gritted his teeth, muttering, "And you've worked for him." Adrian's eyes flashed, "I warned you not to come. I tried to keep you alive." Mara's voice broke, "You betrayed us for survival." Adrian whispered, "For silence." The keeper demanded it. Elias lunged, pinning him against the mast, growling, "Silence kills men faster than water." Mara said, "He fed us lies while steering us toward the grave." Adrian coughed, muttering, "And yet you followed every word." Lightning split the horizon, illuminating the tension on their faces as the sea lurched. Below deck, shadows clung to walls as lanterns flickered. Mara hissed, "How many ships have you lured into his reach?" Adrian's voice cracked, "Too many, but he promised to spare me." Elias snarled, "Spared in body, damned in soul." Mara said, "You condemned others for your breath." Adrian shouted, "I was trapped, like Clara's brother, like Isla, all marked." Mara whispered, "Marked by choice, not fate." Elias raised his knife, blade catching lantern glow, muttering, "Betrayers earn the sea." Adrian's voice fell to a whisper, "I gave him names, not lives." Mara snapped, "Names lead to graves." The hull shuddered as if agreeing, water seeping from seams with groans that matched Adrian's guilt. The sea steadied to a mirror calm, eerie in its silence. Mara said, "Confess fully or drown with your lies." Adrian's hands shook, eyes hollow. The keeper knew Isla. He silenced him first. Mara gasped, whispering, "Isla's signal was truth." Elias muttered, "And you strangled it." Adrian lowered his gaze, voice broken. "I thought if I erased him, I would be spared." Mara said, "You chose betrayal over honor." He shouted, "I chose life." Elias spat, "And now you choose nothing." Mara's fists trembled as she whispered, "His voice still leads us, even if you silenced him." Adrian collapsed to his knees, sobbing, "He owns the sea. He owns me." The still water outside glowed faintly, as though listening. Night fell with oppressive weight, stars hidden behind a thick veil. Mara whispered, "We press on without him." Elias answered, "Trust is dead, but duty remains." Adrian rose slowly, face pale, saying, "You can't face him alone." Mara snapped, "We face him despite you." Adrian muttered, The keeper's truth poisons those who chase it. Elias replied, then let poison sharpen us. Mara's eyes burned. Your betrayal cost lives. You will live with it. Adrian's hands shook as he said, living is its punishment. The sea moaned beneath them, and the recorder flickered, repeating Clara's dying words. The keeper waits. Mara clenched it tight, whispering, then we wait no longer. Elias shifted course toward the horizon's dark glow as Adrian stood silent, shackled by his guilt. The sea glowed with unearthly radiance, a pyramid of light piercing the horizon. Dr. Mara Quinn whispered, the threshold. Captain Elias Ward muttered, we cross and never return. Dr. Adrian Cole shook, saying, the keeper waits inside. The boat trembled as if urged forward, and Mara clutched the recorder, whispering, Clara's last words lead us here. Elias growled, then we go through with eyes open. Adrian's voice cracked, you don't understand, he is not man. He is order given form. Mara answered, truth is worth facing, no matter the shape. Lightning flashed within the light, revealing a towering shadow at its core. Elias said, keeper of secrets. Mara's pulse surged, whispering, then secrets end tonight. The pyramid pulsed, sea bending around it like liquid glass, and the boat surged toward the gate. Inside the radiance, water turned black mirror, stars swirling beneath their hull. Mara whispered, we sail over sky. Elias muttered, sky belongs above. Adrian gasped, he bends directions. A colossal figure emerged, faceless yet cloaked in shifting light. Mara said, keeper of secrets. The voice boomed in her mind, truth drowns those who seek. Mara shouted, truth breathes even in dark waters. Elias roared, no keeper owns the sea. Adrian fell to his knees, sobbing, forgive me. The keeper stretched vast arms, light twisting into chains of energy around the boat. Mara clutched recorder, shouting, Clara's words bind you, not us. The voice growled, the victim is mine. Mara screamed back, the victim is truth. The sea erupted in violent resonance as the chains snapped. The keeper's form fractured into storm walls, rain slicing sideways, lightning clawing sky and sea. Mara shouted, he uses weather as shield. Elias roared, then we carve through. Adrian's voice cracked, no ship survives this. Mara pressed the recorder, Isla's voice replaying, find me. She shouted, his voice breaks the storm. The storm faltered, waves pausing mid-crash. Elias pushed throttle full, growling, hold steady. The boat lunged forward, spray freezing mid-air like shards of glass. Adrian screamed, you'll kill us. Mara's eyes locked on the light, whispering, or free us. Lightning struck mast, but fizzled harmlessly, diverted by the echo of Isla's name. The storm shrieked louder, but the path ahead began to clear. The sea fell silent again, revealing a wreck suspended in glowing current. Mara whispered, the albatross. Elias said, her bones float in air. Adrian sobbed, I gave him this ship. Mara clenched recorder, whispering, then we take it back. Isla's voice played, overlapping with Clara's forming coordinates. Mara said they guide us. The keeper's voice roared, no truth leaves my prison. Elias barked, then your prison breaks. The wreck trembled, artifacts rising, helmets, journals, shoes, each glowing as if memory held weight. Mara said, every victim testifies. Adrian wailed, I never wanted this. Mara's gaze burned, whispering, but you fed it. She raised recorder higher, shouting, their truth is stronger than your silence. The wreck erupted into light, shaking the keeper's shadow. The keeper fractured, its light collapsing into shards scattering across sea and sky. Mara shouted, the prison breaks. Elias roared, then steer us free. Adrian clung to mast, muttering, I see every name I betrayed. The sea glowed with thousands of ghostly faces, whispering thanks. Mara's tears streaked with salt, whispering, Clara, Isla, your voices endure. The recorder blinked one final time, then went dark, its memory spent. Elias said, truth set free, but cost is ours. Mara whispered, every cost worth the revelation. The pyramid collapsed, light imploding, leaving calm sea under dawn's first rays. Adrian sank to his knees, sobbing, I live but carry chains. Elias steered into rising sun, and Mara whispered, the Bermuda Triangle kept its secrets too long. Now it keeps its testimony.